and I am, as Mr. Grizzle said, I am a school attorney. So I often get the question, okay, I know what lawyers do generally, but what does a school attorney do? So let me tell you exactly the type of phone call that I get as it relates to digital citizenship. This is a true story. This happened this school year. Sitting at my desk, I get a call. It's a Tuesday morning from a superintendent and a principal. They're like, Bobby, we had something happen today. Never had it happen before. We need to tell you what's going on because we need some help. I said, okay, what happened? Sophomore in high school, boy, sitting in a math class, literally sitting at his desk. The district's policy is you can have your cell phone during passing periods. You can have your cell phone over lunch, but you can't have it out during class. So the student is sitting at his desk. Teacher turns around to write on the board. Student pulls out his pants and his underwear, snaps a picture of his privates on Snapchat in class. For our purposes, let's call him Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson is on Snapchat in the middle of class, takes a picture of his privates, sends the picture to a girl who's sitting in an English class, also in school. She's sitting in the English class. English teacher turns around to write something on the board. She gets the in her pocket, right? Because everybody has Snapchat, because it's the cat's meow now. So she's got to check this thing right away. So she's sitting in class. To her left is one of her best friends, and behind her is another good friend of hers. So she gets out her phone, sees that she has a snap from another kid, from this boy who she knows that Mr. Johnson is in class. She clicks on it, and what do they see when they all look at the screen? Johnson's Johnson, right? So the principal looks back and sees these girls all looking down laughing. Now let me just say this. When you are looking down at your crotch laughing, they know what you're doing, okay? Students, nobody's crotch is that funny. So the teacher basically gets the girls and says, what just happened? They say, we got this picture. Everybody goes down to the office. They talk to the principal. Principal goes in to talk to the superintendent. Superintendent calls me. He says, Bobby, this thing just happened. What do we do? I said, well, it's simple. You have no choice but to call law enforcement. Why? Because in that particular circumstance, you have no fewer than 3 felonies which have occurred in the state of Nebraska. That's what I'm here to talk to you about. So you've been a part of presentations before from lots of folks warning you about the dangers of misuse of social media, and those are really important. And I hope you took them to heart because I've literally seen this stuff ruin somebody's life. What I'm here to talk to you about, because I'm the last thing that stands between you and being done for the day, are some of the crazy cases and consequences which can happen when students misuse social media. So I'm delighted that we've got parents in here to hear this. For those of you whose parents might not be here now, I'll be talking to them this evening, and I will be ruining social media for all of you equally when I express to your parents some of the things that you're doing online. But in all seriousness, that is the purpose of my presentation. You all have been a part of the be nice to each other online, don't sext, right? Everybody's heard these things before? Yes? Nods at the head? Okay, that'll work. I'm here to talk to you about the actual consequences that are in Nebraska law and some of the cases that we're seeing as a result of inappropriate social media use. All right, so first we're going to talk about cyberbullying. You have probably all seen some version of this happening. Statistics bear out that about 98% of students, by the time they graduate high school, will have either been involved in or have seen cyberbullying happening in real time. We're going to talk about sexting. Sexting is by far, Mr. Johnson's example, that is by far one of the most common areas where we are seeing students get in trouble now, because I think for the most part, they just don't understand that they are committing a felony, which is really serious in the state of Nebraska, if they engage in sexting. So we'll talk about that. Finally, just some last-minute tips and things on digital citizenship. The fact of the matter is, guys, and I think Heather talked to most of you about it before, you are creating a digital footprint. I mean, basically everything that you're writing down now is going into a book, and whether it's an employer or a college, you're going to have to hand them that book. Right? They're going to Google your name. And so these are things that can stick with you for the rest of your life. So we're going to talk about some of that. Okay. Anybody recognize these apps? Can you give me 5? Anybody think you can give me 5? I'm not going to ask you. Just put your hand up when you think you got 5. All right. Who uses Twitter? Who's a Twitter user? A few? Any parent Twitter users? A few? Okay. How about Snapchat? Who uses Snapchat? Yeah, right? Instagram. Who uses Instagram? Who uses Facebook? Who My mother, for the longest time, thought LOL meant lots of love. So, I have a 16-month-old daughter at home. We post a picture about Sophie taking her first steps, right? And it's like a really serious post, and we're super excited. And my mom gets on and posts LOL. My cousin has a dog that dies. Goes on, I'm so sad, I miss my dog. What does my mom get on a post? LOL exclamation point. That's because the apps that you're using now are driving you away from your parents. Is this fair? You don't want them to see what you're doing online, right? I understand. My folks drive me crazy on Facebook. Everything I do, everything I post, my mom's liking, favoriting, whatever it might be. I get it. But the fact of the matter is, the further you're driven away from these more common apps, the more dangerous stuff gets. And we're going to talk about some of these cases. Any online gamers? Yeah. Quite a few. Parents, if you have never thought about this before. Parents. Okay, parents. I want to tell you guys a true story about what happened. So parents, if you are not regularly checking your student's son or daughter's online gaming presence, then you're missing out on this huge amount of messaging and picture exchanging and video exchanging that they might be doing. So students out there who are getting away with a lot because your parents don't know that you can access an internet browser and send messages on these networks, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. We had an example the other day. Student gets on PlayStation Network. 16-year-old boy, he's playing Call of Duty. Gets on the PlayStation Network. He's exchanging messages with a girl from Germany. Oh yeah. This girl from Germany is very impressed with his Call of Duty skills and says, will you send me a nude picture? I'll send you one back. So what does he do? Oh, he fires off that nude picture as quick as he can, right? Because he's going to get a nude picture back from this girl in Germany. Turns out it is not a 16-year-old girl in Germany, right? It's a crazy, creepy pedophile guy that lives in Switzerland. Pedophile guy sends a message and says, hey, this is great. Now that you sent me that nude picture, how about either you send me $500 by a certified check in the mail, or I'll mail these to your parents. Yeah, absolutely. He was basically being blackmailed for money because he had sent this nude picture of himself. We've got cases like that are popping up all over the place. Anybody use Kick Messenger? Any Kick users? Ask.fm, WhatsApp, any of those? Yeah, we've got all sorts of pedophiles on those apps. In fact, get this. There was one survey done, and I think this is important for you students. Anybody that uses Kick Messenger, you know this is probably true. They actually went to a prison, gathered up a group of pedophiles and sex offenders, and gave them phones with all of these apps on them. And they said, which of these make it easier for you to be a creepy pedophile? Almost unanimously, they picked Kick Messenger. One of them said, this app would clearly be the easiest way for me to achieve my sexual gratification, a registered sex offender. There are creepy people on these apps. So if you've ever used them, you may have gotten a weird spam message. I'll talk about a case like that later. Okay. You have to laugh a little bit or I'm not moving on. Thank you. Very good. All right. So cyberbullying. Who has heard of the term cyberbullying? Maybe more importantly, who has seen something like cyberbullying happen? I'm not going to call on you. I just want to know if you've seen people being mean to somebody else. Some of you are raising your hands and the rest of you are lying to me, right? You've seen this stuff happening. It doesn't take much to be engaged in cyberbullying. This is a case out of Oregon. Here's what happened in this case. Girl gets online and posts on Facebook on one of her friends' accounts, you are fat and ugly. Nice short declarative sentence, right? Everybody understands. You are fat and ugly. 21 classmates then go online and like the comment. School says to the girl who posted the comment, because it almost turns into a fist fight in the lunchroom, to the girl who posted the comment, you have a 1-semester activity suspension, meaning no final, can't finish out the basketball season, can't run track, can't go to prom, can't walk across the stage with your classmates. Yeah, and a 10-day out-of-school suspension. So 1-semester activity suspension, 10-day out-of-school suspension. To all the students, the 21 classmates who liked the comment, they also got consequences. 2-day in-school suspension, 30-day activity suspension. What happens when you suspend 21 kids, and there are several starters on both the girls and boys basketball teams that are not able to play for the month of January? They start losing games. Right? So the parents in this case file a lawsuit. right? And their argument is essentially this. You can't stop my student from playing sports, basically, just because they hit the like button on Facebook, or the like button on Instagram, or they favorited or retweeted something on Twitter. And so their argument in front of the judge is, you can't kick them out of sports just because they like something. And the judge's argument in this particular case, sure they can. Absolutely they can. When you're endorsing somebody else's speech that they make on something like Facebook, right, that's the same as you making the speech yourself. So if you're a big Donald Trump fan, right, and you're retweeting and doing all that stuff about all this Donald Trump business, you are essentially using your First Amendment rights of expression. You're saying, I support this person. It doesn't matter who you're supporting. When you like something, it's as though you're making that speech yourself. Finally, we're seeing a lot of anonymous accounts popping up now. Have any of you guys heard of these Instagrams? Anybody heard of this? A fake Instagram account? We got a lot of mashing of words together here. A lot of new lingo for everybody to learn. Instagram accounts. There have been several cases, one in particular in Nebraska. A group of junior high girls created a Instagram account. They then, instead of one person bullying somebody else, they would pass it back and forth among themselves so that none of their parents would find out that they have it. And so that basically whenever somebody would receive a message, it would be coming from a different phone. So every day they'd pass this account around. Nobody would actually come clean to who made the account. So all the girls that admitted to being a part of it, they imposed consequences on all of them. Even though some of them swore that they never ran the account, never posted a message. They were given extracurricular activity suspension. They got mad, threatened to get a lawyer. Lawyer calls me and I said, hey, here's the deal. Sent them this case about liking it, and I said, it doesn't matter, right? The school's burden in terms of evidence they need to impose consequences, school-related consequences, super low. In Nebraska, we've actually got a statute, right? You'll see chapter 79 up here. The 79 statutes, those are the ones that apply specifically to schools. This one says, if you are engaged in an ongoing pattern of physical, verbal, or, here's the kicker, electronic abuse, the school can impose any of these consequences. Loss of extracurricular privileges, number one on the list. The Nebraska Constitution actually has in it written a statement which says, students in Nebraska have a constitutional right to receive a free education. We have been sued, and when I say we, I mean schools, have been sued many times, not because schools impose consequences which kick students out of math class, but because they impose consequences which kick them off the wrestling team. Right? One case in particular, we had a student who got on Twitter and sent direct Twitter messages to his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend, saying things like, I'm going to beat you up. Better not come to school on Monday, I'm literally going to break your bones. Fair enough, right? He is on the wrestling bus on the way to district wrestling when this happens. Student gets off the wrestling bus. Any wrestlers in here, by the way? Yeah. So this is a pretty good wrestler. This kid is, they're anticipating that he's going to make it to state easily, probably going to win the district. So they're at district wrestling. He's warming up. The student who received the messages took screenshots of them, sent them to the principal. Said, hey, I got these messages, just thought I should let somebody know. He's sending me these threats. Principal gets the messages, calls the coach, says, Coach, you need to talk to this kid. Coach goes out, pulls the kid off the mat as he's warming up for district wrestling and says, hey, did you send these messages? Yeah, I did. Shouldn't have sent them. Stupid idea. Was just upset because this is my ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend. He's a wimpy little dork and it just makes me like she dated him. Coach calls the principal back. Principal looks in the activity handbook and it says if you make a terroristic threat, you are removed from that, the remainder of that sport. Morning of district wrestling, student is kicked off the wrestling team because he got on Twitter and sent these private messages, I'm going to beat you up, I'm going to break your bones. Parents got mad, filed a lawsuit. The judge in this particular case, students have almost no right to participate in extracurriculars. If the school had imposed consequences which would have removed that student from class, he could have had a hearing, he could have appealed it to a court, whole bunch of process involved in that. But when it is extracurricular activity suspensions, almost nothing that parents and students can do, right? And so they actually made sure, in the context of bullying, that loss of extracurricular privileges is one of the strongest consequences that a school can impose. In addition to things like loss of recess. Do you have recess anymore? Probably not, right? It'd be sweet if you did, but you don't. Anyway, suspensions, expulsions. We've had students that have been alternatively assigned, meaning they have to attend another school because they're engaging in bullying. Civil consequences. There are two different types of courts, essentially, in Nebraska. Well, we have one type of court, but they hear more or less two different types of cases. criminal cases. Everybody understands that. We'll talk about that in a second. The other part of that is civil cases. So if there is a car accident, and the person driving one of the cars is at fault, one of the remedies that they have is to be taken to civil court, right? Somebody files a lawsuit saying, you owe me money to fix my car. We're talking about civil cases now, not criminal stuff. We have several cases across the country popping up now. And if I was a parent, this one would particularly raise my interest level. Where here's what happens. 1, 2, 3, 4, however many people, however many bullies are picking on the victim. The victim suffers some sort of damages, either psychological. We've got cases where students have been bullied so bad they killed themselves, and parents have filed lawsuits. So here's what happens. The victim and their parents file lawsuits against the bullies and their parents saying, just like the car accident, you caused damages to my child. Therefore, you should have to pay for it. So we've got cases like this popping up all across the country. Money judgments. In one particular case recently, 3 girls were sued by a victim and the victim's parents. They went to court. Their argument in front of the judge was essentially, the student's judge, you can't make us pay money. And the parents' argument in front of the judge was, Judge, you can't make us pay money. We had no idea they even created this account. And the judge in this particular case said, sure we can. Each of the families was ordered to pay $75,000 to the victim. 2 of the families, 2 of the parents ended up selling their houses to pay the judgment. Crazy cases. We've got a lot of home and car foreclosures. Essentially, parents have had to do things like sell their homes, sell their cars to pay these judgments. We've got a lot of community service. In that particular case, the judge said to the students, we're not going to make you pay money, but we're going to make you pick up trash along the highways every Saturday for 6 months. There are a lot of different things that judges are doing now, even if it's not school consequences and not criminal consequences, to try to address this issue of bullying. This is Alex Boston. Everybody take a good look at Alex. Everybody see Alex's face? Her friends created what they called a fat book profile. They used an app called the Fat Face app. And essentially what they did, they were 12 years old when this happened, they used this app to make her look like this. She, understandably, feels horrible. The problem isn't just the picture, it is also the things they put into the account, like the languages she spoke. English, retardish, whorish. They made up fake languages, they made up fake hobbies about her. She did drugs, she sold drugs, she'd have sex with all the boys in class. They made fake YouTube videos. In one of the YouTube videos, she'll give a blowjob to any boy who pays her 20 bucks. They make these videos without her having any idea that it's happening, and they keep posting these to this fake account. So Alex and her parents find out about this account. They're very upset, right? As I'm sure any of you would be if the account was made about you. They filed a lawsuit against the classmates that made the page and their parents. The argument in front of the judge is essentially, you can't make us pay money. The judge in this particular case said, sure they can. And in particular, they addressed it to the parents. If parents don't know what their kids are doing online, the argument goes, then they are negligent. That's just like the parents tossing you the keys to the car and saying, I don't care where you're going, I don't care how fast you drive, I don't know what's happening, just don't tell me about it. Right? So the parents in this case said, we shouldn't ever have to pay for the damages if our kid's bullying somebody. In the court in this case, sure you can. A jury can find that a parent's failure to supervise what their students are doing online can constitute grounds for liability. So imagine you're being a bully to somebody online, and one night over dinner, a sheriff knocks on your door and hands your parents a lawsuit, which essentially says, you need to pay tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars to the victim of your student's bullying. Right? We've got these cases popping up, some that are pretty close to being filed here in the state of Nebraska. In this case, I often get the question, what were her damages? She had to attend counseling. She had to go on medication for depression and anxiety. They would try to drive this girl to school after they found out about this account. Everybody in school was bullying her so much as a result, she literally couldn't open the door to the car. She would start shaking and basically having nervous breakdowns. Parents had to take her to another school, which is about 30 miles away. That cost them time, cost them more money in gas. So all of these things, they allege to be their damages. The bullies and their parents should have to pay for the counseling, the extra gas, the time driving, the mileage. And the court in this case, absolutely. Right? So it's not just consequences affecting students anymore. Now, as a way to get after this, they're bringing parents in too. Okay, criminal consequences. In Nebraska, we have a statute which is most commonly invoked when students are engaging in cyberbullying. It's called a statute which prohibits making what we call terroristic threats. Right? crime of violence with the intent to scare someone. So remember the wrestling kid, right? Sent the Twitter messages. I'm literally going to break your bones. He said, and he admitted afterwards, I intended to scare that kid, right? I wanted to make him scared. Terroristic threat. Or if you do it in what we call a reckless disregard of causing the terror. So for example, I was just kidding, right? Not a good excuse. If you say something like, I'm going to bring a bomb to school, do you think it matters if you're kidding? No. Because you should know that if you say, I'm going to bring a bomb to school, people are going to be afraid. Right? We'll talk about some of these cases. If you threaten to commit a crime of violence against someone with the intent to scare them or in reckless disregard of causing such terror, you are guilty in Nebraska of a Class 4 felony. Serious consequences. We'll talk more about Class 4 felonies here in a second, but suffice it to say this. We have 3 sets of crimes in Nebraska. The lowest are what we call infractions. You just have to pay a fine. A speeding ticket's a good example. Not that any of you have speeding tickets, right? Speeding ticket is an infraction. The next step up from infractions, we have what we call misdemeanors. If you cause an accident, if you're driving recklessly or negligently, or if you steal a candy bar from a grocery store, right? Those are misdemeanors. Then we've got felonies, the most serious crimes in Nebraska. Class 1 felony, Class 2 felonies, that's murder. Class 3 felony, violent sexual assault, rape. Arson with the intent to kill somebody. Those are Class 3 felonies. Next on the list, Class 4. In other words, you threatening to beat somebody up online, if it's charged as a terroristic threat, you can get in more trouble than if you get caught driving while intoxicated. More trouble than if you steal a TV from Walmart. Right? Class 4 felonies are super serious crimes. And so we've got students in Nebraska who are being charged with these Class 4 felonies because they're engaging in cyberbullying and making threats to somebody else online. High school students are arrested. One high school student is arrested at school for threatening a classmate on social media. This is back in the MySpace days. Any of you guys know what MySpace is? If you, any parents or staff members, you remember MySpace. Believe it or not, there was a time when there wasn't Facebook. And before that, what filled that ugly vacuum of unused time was MySpace. Does anybody have a MySpace account still? A few? One brave soul? That's because MySpace is just filled with like struggling musicians, right? Pedophiles. This is when MySpace was cool. So if it helps, pretend like this happened on Facebook. Student gets on Facebook and says this, I'm going to beat you up. Terroristic threat? Anybody? Yes. How about I'm going to plant a bomb in your locker? Terroristic threat? How about this one? You deserve to die. Terroristic threat? No, because he didn't say he was going to do it. Wrong. In this particular case, here's what the judge said. In this one, you're going to use your fists. In this one, you're going to use a bomb. The only thing you haven't done is specify the means in this one. Right? 3 counts of terroristic threats. Arrested. This kid in Alabama was 17 years old, sent to prison for getting on Facebook, on MySpace, and making these threats. Right? Pretty serious stuff. In Nebraska, if this student had done this, he could have gone to prison for 15 years. So he's sitting there in front of the judge, right? He's at his criminal trial. He's sitting on the bench. The judge is up here. The county attorney's asking him questions. And the county attorney says, why would you post those things? What do you think his response was?
I was mad.
I was just kidding. Or how about this one? I don't even know how to make a bomb. Guess what the judge said? Doesn't matter, right? Your joking intent does not matter because you should have known that saying I'm going to plant a bomb in your locker. We've had cases where students have gotten on Yik Yak and said, I'm going to bring a gun to school. I'm going to bring a knife to school, right? Given the landscape across this country and some of the crazy things that are happening with mass shootings, this stuff is not joking material. And so we've got kids in Nebraska who have been charged for things like Yik Yak for making terroristic threats. Okay, this is Polk County, Florida. This is Rebecca. One of Rebecca's friends was bullying her on Kick Messenger and Ask.fm. Why aren't you dead? You should die. Drink bleach and die. Go kill yourself. Rebecca, as a result of all this bullying, and this girl's also spreading a ton of rumors about her at school, Rebecca climbs 200 feet to the top of an abandoned concrete factory and jumps to her death. Everybody in town is really sad. There are so many people that want to attend the funeral. They're actually going to host the funeral at the school. The morning of the funeral, This girl who had been sending these messages gets back on Ask.fm and Kick Messenger and sends this message. Yes, I know I bullied Rebecca and she killed herself, but I don't give a bleep. The morning of the funeral. Law enforcement finds out about this and they have to answer this question. Is this a terroristic threat?
Yeah.
Anybody think it is? Maybe, maybe not, right? Well, in this case, they decided to charge her with making terroristic threats. They said, even though it wasn't you saying how you were going to do it, you still wanted her to suffer consequences. As a result of this, and this is important because for any of you that are traveling for the holidays, you need to know, in Florida they passed a law, it's called the Rebecca's Law. What it says is, if you are cyberbullying, that is a crime. You don't have to make a threat. Getting on Facebook and saying to somebody you're fat and ugly could constitute a crime in some states. Any of you that are traveling to Florida, Wisconsin, Missouri, or California, if you're going to the bowl game, for example, don't cyberbully when you're there because it's a crime. Okay? We haven't had it passed in Nebraska yet. Last session of the unicameral last year, they were thinking about it. It wouldn't surprise me if we see a criminal cyberbullying bill in Nebraska this session. Okay, lots of gay-gag threats. Here's one in particular. T. Hill going to do some bad at school tomorrow. Like what? Please explain. Let's say it involves a big boo. Off the top of your head, what is he talking about? See? What do you think the school administrators thought he was talking about? What do you think the police thought he was talking about? Phone call into law enforcement. They say, law enforcement, here's a screenshot of what happens. Law enforcement calls Yik Yak. Within a matter of an hour, law enforcement has tracked down not just who posted it, but an actual map with a red X over where it was posted from. Kid posted it at night. He's still laying in bed when the school finds out about this at like 6:30 in the morning. Law enforcement knocks on his door, goes into his house, wakes the kid up. And they say, why did you post this? What do you think he said? I was just kidding, right? And what do you think the cop said in that case? Don't care. It doesn't matter. You made a threat to commit a crime of violence, and you should have known that calling in a bomb threat is going to scare people. Charged with making terroristic threats. Same thing happened at UNK. I don't know if any of you heard about this a couple years ago. Student puts on Yik Yak, I'm going to blow up 2 dorms. Law enforcement gets a hold of it. Knock on his door. Student, did you post this on Yik Yak? Yeah. Why? I don't know. Thought it was funny. Charged with class 4 felonies. Right? So we've got a lot of these cases coming up. The fact of the matter is, I was just kidding, not a good defense. Okay. Any questions about cyberbullying before we move on to everybody's favorite? Okay. We've got a half hour, and you're done. Right? I'm gonna ask you to pay attention to this stuff because if I was a student, this is what I'd want to know. The fact of the matter is, I know that there are people that are sexting. It happens everywhere. It doesn't matter which state you're in, doesn't matter which school you're in. You probably know of friends, or maybe you've done it yourself, that have been sexting. So I want to give you an understanding of the consequences, so at least you know those when you have to make these decisions. Okay, so sexting. That is the inappropriate sending of inappropriate pictures or messages that relate to sex, right? Sex and texting. Sexting. This is a fascinating survey. Here's what it asks. How many of you have sent one of these pictures? They asked high school students. Almost 30%, male and female, have sexted. So look at the person on your left, look at the person on your right. For you students, chances are one of you, by the time you leave high school, will have sent one of these messages. How about this one? How many of you have been asked to sex? How many of you have been asked to sex? Or how many of you have asked? 50% of males have said, will you send me a picture? Right? 21% of females have said, will you send me a picture? How many of you have been asked? 68% of girls. 2/3 of the girls that graduate from high school have been asked to send one of these inappropriate pictures. Here's the thing that I think is the craziest. Were you bothered by the request to send a nude picture of yourself? 50% of boys, not at all. I'm here to party, right? Mr. Johnson, he clearly wasn't bothered by it. 50%. All this tells me is that 50% of kids either didn't know the consequences or were okay staring down the barrel of a felony. And we're going to talk about in Nebraska the actual statute, the law in Nebraska, which governs sexting. This is an incident that actually happened at a Nebraska school. Girl is on Kick Messenger, Ask.fm, Snapchat, She is sent a message by a creepy dude who spams her with a nude picture of himself. He has taken a nude picture of some random person, random male he found on the internet, and sent it to this girl. And said, now that you have a nude picture of me, you need to send me a nude picture back. And the girl said, hold on, I didn't ask you for this picture, and I got it, but I don't want you to send me any more. He screenshots and then photoshops it down, crops it down, so all you see is the part where she said, I got the picture and a copy of the picture. He sends her a picture of the screenshot. Says, I'm going to send your parents this message, which tells them that you have a nude picture of me, unless you send me a nude picture of yourself. What should she have done? Shown her parents, right? Shown any trusted adult. Called the police. I don't care. Anything but what she did do, which is what? Send him a nude picture. Absolutely. He gets the nude picture. He says, you're going to come meet me in the park at 10 o'clock on Tuesday night, or I'm going to send this picture to everybody. What should she have done? Told somebody, right? I hope in your head it's like, tell somebody. Instead, it's Tuesday morning. She's leaving for school. She walks down outside of the house, around the house, down to her bedroom window, which is in the basement. She takes the screen off. She goes to school. Comes back for practice. They have dinner. She does her homework. It's about 9:30. Everybody goes to bed. She sets an alarm on her phone. 9:50. She wakes herself up because she's got to meet this guy in the park at 10, right? 9:50. She wakes herself up, puts on dark clothes, sneaks out of her window, is literally standing on the corner of the driveway just like this. I got a call from an administrator the next day. I was scared. Standing on the corner of her driveway just like this because her parents have a big floodlight out front. She's looking around to make sure nobody can see her. All of a sudden, she thinks nobody's around. She takes off on a beeline across the driveway, headed north toward the park. It just so happens that her neighbor, not across the street, but one house over, happens to be wheeling his trash out to the corner of the curb. It's garbage day Wednesday morning. Looks at this girl running across the driveway and says, hey, what are you doing? Girl stops, immediately breaks down in tears. Says, I don't know, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have sent this guy. She's just in a mess, because she's literally about to go meet this guy in the park. They go in, wake up her parents, call law enforcement. Law enforcement sends an officer down there. They're expecting to find a guy who said that he was from, where did he say he was from? Des Moines, I think. Yeah. And instead, they find a 55-year-old pedophile from Texas. The guy from the state of Texas has made his way all the way to Nebraska to kidnap this girl. What were his crimes in Texas? Inappropriate sexual contact with a minor, child abduction. He was going to kidnap this girl, probably kill her. Scary stuff, right? I mean, literally, we're this close to having one of these headlines in Nebraska. Here's another case, State versus Gallegos. This is a catfishing case. Y'all know what I mean when I say catfishing? Yes. That poorly produced show on MTV? Okay, I watched it a couple times. I make fun of it. Here's the deal. Parents, if you've never heard of the term catfishing, you remember that linebacker that played for Notre Dame a couple years ago, Manti Te'o? He totally had that girlfriend who was totally hot and was totally not fake. And then it turns out she was fake because it was one of his third cousins once removed in California that was fooling him. That's catfishing. That's somebody creating fake accounts to fool somebody into believing they're somebody that they're not. Lots of catfishing cases out there now. Lots of creepy pedophiles, right? The sex offenders that were in that penitentiary that said, I would use Kick Messenger. Well, you'll never guess. 16-year-old girl met a 17-year-old boy on Kick Messenger. They talk. He has all the accounts, right? She says, hey, let's snap back and forth. So he sends her his Snapchat handle. Hey, what's your Instagram account? He sends her the Instagram account. This person who she's talking to has an image, right? A likeness. It is consistent through all these accounts. He's made dozens of accounts with this person's picture on it. So this girl, 16-year-old girl, let's say for our purposes, this isn't what happened. But it was something like this. Girl says, I'm from Fairbury. Guy says, I'm from North Platte. Far enough away that it's unlikely they're ever going to meet in person, but close enough that she thinks, oh, I'm just talking to another kid from Nebraska, right? A 17-year-old kid that attends North Platte Public Schools. They talk for a while, become friends. He eventually, will you be my girlfriend? Yes, I'd love to be your girlfriend, even though I've never met you and I don't know you. Okay, that's great. Now that we're boyfriend and girlfriend, you need to send me nude pictures of yourself. She says, no. The records in this case, they had a big printout of all their conversations. Dozens of times she tells this guy no. Finally, he says, either you send me nude pictures or I'm going to break up with you. So what does she do? Sends him the nude pictures. Absolutely. He says, great, now that I've got your pictures, I'm going to print them off. I'm going to send them to all your classmates. I'm going to post them all over town. There will be nude pictures, just like somebody's dog is missing. There will be nude pictures of you posted all over town. The girl freaks out. He says, you're going to come meet me in the park, right? Similar type of facts. Instead, though, what does this girl do? Tells her parents. Her parents call law enforcement. They send an undercover officer, a young female officer, over to their house. What's going on here? Well, I met this 17-year-old boy, and he started to really threaten me and harass me, and here's all of his social media accounts, and he said he's from North Platte, and I'm in love with him, and I just don't know what to do. The police officer puts on this girl's clothes, puts on a cap, gets in the girl's car, drives to the park. Sitting there, waiting. 2 hours pass, nothing. Finally, she sees some ruffling in the bushes. There's a guy that walks out. This law enforcement officer is expecting to arrest a 16-year-old kid from North Platte on things like child enticement. Instead, this guy comes out. He has taken the image of a 16-year-old kid from New Jersey and has used it to create literally dozens of social media accounts to fool this girl into believing that he's a boy her age that lives in her state. Right? Crazy stuff. She actually believed, until they arrested this guy, that she had a 15-year-old boyfriend, or 16-year-old boyfriend, that lived a couple hours away. Crazy stuff. It doesn't just involve crazy, creepy people either. This is a case out of Madison County, Nebraska. This is a 20-year-old kid who has convinced boys in school and girls to send him nude pictures. He is using pictures of 13, 14, and 15-year-old girls to sextort them, right? To use them to get sex, to use their nude pictures against them to blackmail them, just like we see in these cases. So it's not I sent a picture to a boyfriend one time, or I sent a picture to my girlfriend one time. Those pictures after they're sent never go away. And that's just the truth, right? So we've got dozens of cases like this now across the country, but I just sent him that one picture. He promised me he'd never send it on, right? We exchanged pictures. We agreed we'd never send them to anybody else. Wisconsin versus Stanzel. This is the craziest sextortion case you will have ever heard of. In this case, a high school boy creates a fake Facebook profile pretending to be a girl who lives in a neighboring town. Couple of big schools involved. Wouldn't be uncommon for people in this boy's class to not know a girl from a neighboring school. So this boy in the same class as all these other kids. What?
Oh, I'm looking for something.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were signaling at me like, oh, that's great. Keep going.
Colton?
Yeah, go ahead.
Chica? Swimming?
Colton went homesick.
He did go homesick. Okay.
Hope that wasn't my fault. Okay. So here's what happens in this case. Girl, right, sends messages to these boys in class. Boys believe they're talking to a girl at the neighboring town. She says to them, send me nude pictures and I'll send you one back, right? 50% of the boys that get the question are like, yeah, I'm gay, right? Doesn't bother me at all. So a bunch of them start sending pictures to this girl at the neighboring school. Turns out, when this male classmate of theirs gets the pictures, he says, oh, hey, by the way, I'm your male classmate, and you're going to come have sex with me. Or I'm going to tell everybody in school that you sent me these nude pictures. So he would get the pictures of his classmates, and he would use them to blackmail them into coming and meeting him and engaging in sexual activity. 31 victims. This kid blackmails 31 of his classmates. As soon as they come to meet him and engage in these sex acts, he then has hidden cameras and he takes pictures of them engaged in the acts. Uses them to continue to blackmail these boys in his class for 10 years. There are cases of boys who have graduated, go off to college, come back for a Thanksgiving or holiday break, and they get a message from this kid saying, hey, guess what? I still got those pictures. You better come meet me. Right? Kids coming back to visit their parents, sneaking out of the house at night to go meet this kid. They literally walked across the stage with him at graduation. 31 different kids. How did they find out that this was happening? 2 of the boys were back that had graduated with this kid, They went to a bar one night, had a few too many drinks, and one of them says to the other one, I got something I need to tell you. It's kind of crazy. I've been holding this inside for a long time. I have been blackmailed by this kid that we graduated with for the last 10 years. And here's what's been happening. He uses pictures of me, doing things with him, and I just had to tell somebody. The kid in the booth next to him, who's his friend, who he's telling, looks over at him and says, "You gotta be kidding. Me too." These two kids are two of the victims. They didn't tell a soul. All the people that said no, but had received the request to send the picture in the first place, never told anybody. The 31 victims in this case, never told anybody. Never reported it to law enforcement, never. So these two kids eventually figure out that there are more than one, there are obviously lots of them involved. They tell law enforcement pieces all this together, right? Crazy stuff. If something like this is happening, you have to report it. But the only way that you avoid something like this is by reporting it. Okay. Here's what I'm going to ask you to take away from this, right? If you don't take anything else away from this, I want you to remember this slide. In Nebraska, if you get caught sexting, even if you're under 19 years old, you can be charged with a Class 4 felony. We talked about how serious that is, right? You get in more trouble sexting. Mr. Johnson, right? He gets in more trouble sending that snap than he does if he gets caught for DUI. So serious, serious consequences. In Nebraska, if you are caught sexting and charged with and convicted of a Class 4 felony, that can be 5 years in prison for each offense, $10,000 fine, and or, meaning they can impose all these consequences if they want, required registration on the Nebraska Sex Offender Registry. So if you're asking yourself, wait, I'm a minor, would I have to register as a sex offender if I get caught sexting? The answer is yes. Anybody ever heard of the Sex Offender Registry? A few? Well, here's how it works. In Nebraska, if you are convicted of what we call a crime of sexual deviance, right? Any crime of sexual deviance, rape, sexual assault, inappropriate contact with a minor, right? Those sorts of things are crimes of sexual deviance. If you're convicted in Nebraska of one of those crimes, you have to register on a statewide database run by the Nebraska State Patrol. You then can search within that database, and it pops up everybody in your, you can set it, you can do search parameters by zip code, and it pops up everybody that's been convicted of one of these crimes. So in other words, if you get caught sexting, like some of these people will talk about in the cases coming up, you'll be a registered sex offender in Nebraska, and if somebody does a search for the registered sex offenders in their area, your picture will pop up. So the Nebraska Sex Offender Registry will basically follow you everywhere. If you have any desire to go to professional school, go to college at all, right? If you want to be a teacher, or a doctor, or a lawyer, well, you shouldn't be a lawyer. But if you want to be, if you want to be any of those professions and hold a professional certificate or license, you cannot be a convicted sex offender. Do yourselves a favor, right? If any of your parents or relatives hold a professional license from the state of Nebraska, ask your teachers if you want to. What sort of background check they went through before they were given a professional license. They'll all tell you that if they had been a registered sex offender, no chance they would have gotten their license, right? I had to go through the licensing process as an attorney, same deal. So it's something that sticks with you forever. This is a case from Virginia. Boy has been asking girl, boyfriend and girlfriend, to send him nude pictures for a long time. Girl has said no, no, no. Boy says, either you send me nude pictures or I'll break up with you. Girl says, well, hey, what about this newfangled Snapchat thing? This is pretty cool, right? Then I know we won't be able to keep the picture. Boy takes a 4-second video, or girl takes a 4-second video, 4 seconds. Sends it to her boyfriend, right? She's essentially just standing in the mirror after a shower, waving at him, saying, I love you. He gets the video. What does he do? Screenshots, duh, right? This is before Snapchat told you they took screenshots too. Now that they tell you that screenshots, so she had no idea that he's taking the screenshots. So he's got the pictures on his phone. They break up. Boy sends the pictures to 3 of his classmates. The 3 classmates get the pictures. They find out that the girl broke his heart. What do? Everybody. There's an assembly just like this. All the kids, 7 and 12, are sitting out there in the assembly. Law enforcement officer standing on the stage said, raise your hand if you've received these pictures. Almost all the hands go up. Okay, put your hands down. Raise your hand if you haven't received these pictures. Maybe a dozen hands go up of all the people in school. These pictures have been forwarded to so many people that law enforcement essentially gathered all the cell phones to create this three-dimensional spider web to figure out who sent them and where they sent them, and who they received them from and where they sent them to. So in this particular case, we have several arrests made. The girlfriend who created and distributed child pornography, even though it was a picture of herself. That's child pornography. The boyfriend solicited, created, by taking the screenshots, and distributed child pornography. The three boys who received the child pornography possessed it and distributed it. Right? So anybody keeping track at home, we got felonies piling up here. The boyfriend and girlfriend settled their case with law enforcement. We don't know exactly what their consequences were. This case is about the three boys who distributed the pictures. They are each arrested at school, put in handcuffs, walked out of school in handcuffs in front of all their classmates. Each of them is charged with 12 counts of distribution of child pornography. How many screenshots did he take? Not one. 4-second video. How many screenshots? 4. Nope.
2.
12. Who said 12? 12. 12 screenshots. That's impressive, right? 12 screenshots. 4-second video. How do we know it was 12 screenshots? Separate felony for each picture. These boys are then taken to trial. These boys are 17 years old, by the way, right? Have any of you heard of or you've seen on TV a criminal trial, right? You've got a jury. Any of you guys know how juries are made up? They send out a list. Basically, they've got a big list of all the registered voters in your county. They send out a list to the unlucky ones that get drawn. And those people have to come to the courthouse, and they have to go through jury selections. So the people that are the juries in this case, deciding whether or not they're going to send these 17-year-old boys to prison and require them to register as sex offenders, are people that know them. One of the guys on the jury plays golf with one of the kids' dads. He's selected to be on the jury. They go through the case, right? The whole question, the county attorney is standing up there asking these boys, why did you send those pictures on? I didn't know I could get in trouble. I didn't know it would be a problem, right? Doesn't matter. They have distributed child pornography. This jury then goes back to deliberate. The jury comes out, convicts them, each of them, for distribution of child pornography. This means people that knew these boys, received the evidence in the case, went back to deliberate, had no choice. Why? Because normally when you're talking about serving on a jury, they ask you to do two things. One, determine the truthfulness of the people who are witnesses. And two, determine if a crime has been committed. Right? So did the evidence that you received provide proof beyond a reasonable doubt that a crime had been committed? No doubt about it. These boys said, yes, we sent the pictures. It is super easy to prove these crimes, right? Every picture that you send, every picture you take, creates a digital imprint. They can find out about it even if you delete it, even if you send it over Snapchat, even if you take a picture and send it to somebody else and delete it from your phone and delete the message. All of that creates a digital imprint. So when the law enforcement officer explained this to all the members of the jury, they really had no choice, right? Convicted, guilty, registered as sex offenders for the rest of their lives. That's 17. St. versus Copenhagen. Really good football player. His girlfriend and Mr. Copenhagen have been exchanging nude pictures. At one point in time, he's got 6 pictures in his possession. He is telling people, because he's really proud of it, that he's got these 6 pictures. He plays in the first game, throws something like 4 touchdown passes. He's getting college scholarships. He's a really good quarterback. Law enforcement gets what they call an anonymous tip. What they think happened is their rival school was who they were supposed to play that next week. Somebody from the rival school found out that he had been talking about having these pictures on his phone, called the police. Police get a search warrant, search his phone, find the pictures on his phone. He's charged with 6 counts of possession of child pornography, 1 for each picture he had on his phone. They go to court. The judge says not only may you be sentenced to prison, Mr. Copenhagen, you now cannot own any cell phone or any other technological device for 2 years. No cell phone, no computer, no iPad. For 2 years, he's got to use landlines, and that's it. Right? That's no way to live. I can see you sitting there right now, scared to death that somebody would make you live without a phone for 2 years. Yeah, absolutely. So he appeals his sentence and says, hey, you can't make me live without a phone. And the judge is like, oh, yes, I can. Absolutely. In fact, we think that's a great idea. Anybody that gets caught sexting in the state of Virginia, we're going to take your phone away for as long as we want to. Right? Lots of different sort of consequences, even in addition to those criminal consequences. We've got cases in Nebraska where high school students have been charged with class 4 felonies for distributing child pornography, for engaging in sex. Right? In one particular case, boys took their cell phones, put them in the girls' locker room, and clicked record video. Left the locker room. Record video of the girls changing after practice, and then start distributing those videos out to other boys in school. One of the kids happens to turn 19 while this case is pending. He will go to trial as an adult. Probably, at least there's a decent likelihood, unless he's able to plead down, he could end up in prison for this little stunt. The other boys got community service and probation. So we've got in Nebraska lots of county attorneys who are charging these cases. This is one of the last ones, Florida versus Alpert. This is Mr. Alpert. His girlfriend and Mr. Alpert have been exchanging nude pictures. They break up. What does he do? Sends them to everybody. And in Mr. Alpert's case, literally everybody in his contact list. Her parents, his parents, the pastor at church. Yep. His relatives that live in other states. He's got relatives that live outside of the country who receive these pictures. He is charged and convicted with distribution of child pornography in the state of Florida. He will be a registered sex offender for the rest of his life. They were even considering charging him in those other states because he distributed child pornography into those other states, including into some other countries. Each of them could have charged him with felonies because he distributed child porn into their territory, into their jurisdiction. So, for those of you who are going away from the state of Nebraska for the holidays, you could be charged in each of those states if you're distributing child pornography, right? So you're not sexting at all, but just understand that it's not as simple as sending that one picture back and forth, right? Most of these cases start with, but we told each other we'd never send it to anybody else. And it ends up like this. Okay, this is a survey of county attorneys. In Nebraska, almost 80% of the counties in Nebraska have charged minors with this crime. Now, not all of them have resulted in some sort of prison term, but it's happened. So it's not just me making idle threats. In fact, what happens in a lot of these cases is somebody like me will come into school, and I will spew my hot air all over and say, if you get caught sexting in Nebraska, you can be charged with a class 4 felony, right? And then kids continue to sext. And then the law enforcement gets a hold of it, and they say something like, did they understand the consequences of their actions? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you right now. I just ruined sexting for all of you. Because if you get caught, there's no longer a question about whether you understood the consequences, right? Because in Nebraska, what can you be charged with? Class 4 felony, right? One more time. If you get caught sexting in Nebraska, what can you be charged with? Class 4 felony. And now you're all on video admitting to it. So don't sex, because now you know. Okay. Come on, this is pretty funny, right? Thank you. All right, real quickly, I'm going to cover these two cases because they're really serious. Hope Witzel and Jessica Logan. In the case of both of them, they send a nude picture to their boyfriend. They break up. What does boyfriend do? Sends the picture on. In both of these cases, the picture went to so many people, and the girls started getting so many messages. For example, in the case of Jessica Logan, she lived in Ohio. Her picture makes it all the way to places like New York because it's been forwarded on to so many people. She starts getting random messages from people saying, either you send me more nude pictures, or I'm going to send these pictures to your parents. Trying to use the picture that they have of her against her. This goes on for about 2 weeks until she goes into her parents' bathroom and hangs herself with her own belt. Really, really serious consequences. So, in both of these cases, when they're interviewing people, set one picture to a significant other, and this sort of stuff happens. So it's not just crimes. It's not just being drawn into court because of things that you're doing for cyberbullying. In a lot of these cases, it can be really serious. Okay, so what now? The majority of sexting incidents involve pictures sent to boyfriends and girlfriends under the promise of, I love you. I'll never send that to anybody else. Okay? If you've been involved in one of these things, stop it. Because I just ruined sexting for you, because now you know that you can be charged with a... Right. It doesn't matter if you send private messages, right? It doesn't matter that you don't post it on somebody's Facebook wall. privacy in those. Nothing you do or say goes away. I know Heather talked to you about this earlier, your digital footprint. Snapchats don't disappear. This might surprise some of you, I hope not. Vanishing videos don't actually vanish, right? If law enforcement wants to get these Snapchats, they can. They don't go away. Nothing you send goes away. Nothing at all carries any expectation of privacy. So for example, Karen, one of the other attorneys that I practice with, her daughter applied to go to school at TCU this year. TCU said, not only do we want all of your social media accounts, we want you to send us the passwords too. So think of literally everything that you got on your social media accounts, and then think of somebody else reading them. Most colleges now, upwards of 90% in a recent survey in our area have said, oh yeah, we totally check social media. One of these admissions officers said something which I thought was really kind of profound. I've learned so much more about what they post on social media than I can in any letter of recommendation or admissions essays. People are reading what you're doing on social media. Tons of cases like this one. This is a tweet of a high school football coach. A college coach told me today that one of our young men wasn't offered a football scholarship for 2 reasons. 1, Twitter. 2, his transcript. Kid didn't have very good grades. But the college said in this case, we would have taken a chance on him. Maybe he was just a student that struggled a little bit with school. But as soon as we checked his Twitter account, we realized when he was saying things like, too tired to do homework, gonna hang out with Bang instead, right? Was he struggling in school or did he just not do his homework? So they decided we're not gonna offer a scholarship. Finally, consider the recipient's reaction, right? Teens say that they expect to hook up after they begin sexting. The Nebraska Attorney General just recently said, sexting is the new first base. Everybody follow me? Sexting is the new first base. It is more likely, after doing informal surveys in the state of Nebraska, students that ever engage in any sort of physical intimacy are significantly more likely to have sexted first. Sexting is no longer just something that happens to be funny. Sexting is something that is often now a precursor to pressure to hook up, yet alone all these weird sextortion cases that we have. Most teens say that they bully as a joke. Of course, right? When you say something like, I'm going to plant a bomb in your locker, judges don't care that you're joking. I don't know how to make a bomb is not a good defense. The fact that the defendant intended his actions to constitute a joke is no part of criminal guilt. He's guilty regardless of his joking intent. Finally, I just told the 5th and 6th graders this one, so I hope that you roll your eyes, because you're going to. But here's the honest truth. If you follow the grandma rule, you will not get in trouble. Have you ever heard of the grandma rule? Anybody? Well, you can ask the 5th and 6th graders. They'll tell you about it. If you wouldn't send it to your grandma, don't take a picture of it. Would you sext your grandma?